always despised the feeling of being confined in narrow, closed spaces. However, what I experienced 3 years ago took it to an entirely different level. I'm John, a 30-year-old typical American working as a second-hand car dealer. My approach involves buying damaged cars for a bargain, repairing and revamping them to give them a fresh, attractive look, and then selling them for a profit. I advertise all the vehicles I have for sale on various Facebook groups, a strategy that has consistently proven effective for me. 3 years ago, I stumbled upon a golden opportunity, a dirt-cheap Toyota Supra. The car had recently been in an accident, and the original owner was eager to part ways with it for some quick cash. Over the next 6 months, I dedicated myself to revamping every aspect of the car. Once finished, it looked even better than the original. Ecstatic and eager, I snapped pictures of the car and posted them on different Facebook groups. Soon enough, I received several messages from interested buyers, though many were hesitant about the price I had set. However, one person was genuinely interested in buying the car. He requested that I drive to his location for a closer inspection, claiming he had no means of transportation. Intrigued, I agreed and found myself near his house in a suburban area, where houses were spread out. Upon knocking on his door, we engaged in a conversation about the vehicle. As I showcased the car, I could hear some footsteps approaching me, and as soon as I turned around to inspect who it was, a metal bat struck my head, and I saw a flash of white light before losing consciousness. When I woke up, disoriented and with no memory of recent events, I found myself in pitch darkness. It took me a while to piece together the situation. I tried to lift myself up, but I kept hitting my head against something, just to realize I was trapped in a small, confined space. Every movement produced a squeaking sound, indicating that I might be inside a wooden box. My arms were stuck behind my back, and I felt a wooden plank right against my face. I struggled to move. The situation worsened quickly as I detected a rusty smell and felt a warm liquid flowing down my neck. I was bleeding once again. Panicking, negative thoughts flooded my mind, making me feel as if I were in a cage, slowly bleeding to death. Desperation set in, and I began hitting the wooden box with my head, causing the plank to collapse and press tightly against my chest. It felt like dozens of kilograms pressed against my body, crushing me slowly. Taking a breath in was a challenge, and I quickly found myself struggling to get some air. As I fought to breathe, I realized my left hand was now free. Using it to knock on the wooden box, that I then realized was actually a coffin, I screamed for help. Digging my hand behind the plank, I felt a thick layer of dirt falling on my face and making its way down my throat, adding to my suffocation. I'm buried alive, I thought in horror. However, I continued fighting, pushing the dirt away and screaming for help. A glimmer of hope emerged when I heard dogs barking above me. Seizing the opportunity, I screamed even louder. A man's voice responded, asking what had happened. "Please take me out of here, I'm trapped," I pleaded. "I'll go get help, don't die," the man said as he rushed to get help. The agonizing minutes that followed felt like an eternity. Barely getting enough oxygen and feeling my body being squeezed, I blacked out multiple times. Finally, I was pulled out and rushed to the hospital. I had lost a significant amount of blood and woke up almost 3 days later. Fortunately, the assailants were apprehended. They had attempted to steal my car, thinking they had successfully killed me. They buried me not far from the residence to eliminate any evidence, but their plan was foiled. And here I am today, sharing my harrowing tale with the world. Finding yourself lost in unfamiliar territory is unnerving on its own. But imagine the added fear of being paralyzed, unable to move a single finger, and struggling for each breath. This unsettling scenario unfolded just a few months ago when I embarked on a journey to visit family residing 6 hours away. What seemed to be a routine trip turned into a nightmarish hell pretty quickly. Oblivious to the gradual depletion of my car's fuel, I pressed on until the low gas alert blared and the car incessantly beeped. The road stretched ahead of me, surrounded by expansive fields dotted with scattered houses. In a futile search for a nearby gas station, I unwittingly burned the last gallons of gas, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere. The situation worsened as night fell, nearing 10 p.m. on a cold December night, casting a dark shroud over the area. With no other options at my disposal, I pulled over, strategically placing warning triangles and lights, and waited in vain for assistance. An hour passed, and frustration mounted, so I had to resort to another plan, knocking on doors and asking for some gasoline with an empty water bottle in my hand. I had to leap over a field fencer, heading towards the nearest house, which appeared to be few hundreds of meters away. The house's faint illumination was the only anchor preventing me from getting lost in the vast field. However, my journey through the pitch-black surroundings took a perilous turn as I stumbled into a metallic pit that I later on identified as an artesian well. The pit's narrow confines ensnared both my legs and left shoulder, rendering me helpless with only my face and right arm protruding outside of the pit. Calm attempts to free myself proved futile as panic set in, exacerbated by the tight confines squeezing my chest and thighs. I was unable to fill my lungs with air as my chest was being slowly squeezed, but things quickly got even worse for me as my desperation gave way to hallucinations. Or so I tried to convince myself, as a cold hand from beneath wrapped around my ankle, as if it tried to pull me down, deeper inside the well. As I was slowly drowning deeper, someone was whispering in my ear, "You'll join me." I could swear at that point I was even feeling their warm breath against my ear. With each pull, the depths of the artesian well seemed to claim me, and my ability to scream or breathe slowly diminished. Dawn revealed my descent to a depth of 3 meters. My right hand also trapped this time, with only my head facing the pit. Unexpectedly, the gripping hand released its hold, and relief washed over me as footsteps approached. However, the shocking sight of a woman with a rotting half-face, reveling in my struggle, confronted me. Her chilling proclamation, "You'll join me," revealed her as the malevolent force from earlier. In a tearful acceptance of my fate, the woman abruptly fled in terror, leaving me screaming for help again. The house owner finally heard my cries and found me, but the situation required authorities and special machinery to extract me from the well. I survived that night, but the lingering mystery of that night remains, leaving me unable to fully grasp the reality of what transpired in the depths of that artesian well. I've recently moved into a new apartment complex, mainly because it's much cheaper than where I used to live. Returning home from my night shift, I discovered that the elevator was under maintenance. Living on the 18th floor and being completely consumed and exhausted by work that night, taking the stairs felt impossible. Trying to find a solution, I remembered seeing another guy using a different elevator in our complex a few months prior. This elevator was very old and abandoned, seemingly existing for decades. However, I knew it worked fine as I saw the guy take it many times during my stay. Located behind the apartment complex, it was an external elevator, relatively far from the apartments, but I decided to take it. Entering it, everything seemed fine, except for the rusty walls and faint, flickering lights. But at that time, I just wanted to get home and throw myself on my bed. Pushing the buttons, the elevator started going up, but it felt longer than it should. Probably I'm just used to the new elevator, I thought. Quickly, the waiting time got remarkably long. It took usually half a minute to reach my floor, but this time, it took more than 5 minutes, and it kept going up. At one point, I thought the elevator had been stationary the entire time. I tried to force it open, but it didn't work. I started screaming and knocking, asking for help, and the door suddenly opened. I was ecstatic as the man I'd seen taking the elevator multiple times was going inside with me. I took a deep breath of relief, realizing I was on the 15th floor. Feeling awkward for screaming earlier, I tried to spark a little convo with the man. I thought the elevator was stuck for a minute, I said, but he didn't respond. His eyes seemingly fixated on the door. I decided to shut up. The flickering of the elevator's lights became more frequent, and the darkness lasted longer than it used to. The flickering of the elevator's lights became more frequent. Suddenly, the lights were out. Buried in the pitch darkness, I said, "What's going on here? This old piece of rust doesn't seem to work at all." Once again, no replies from the man. But suddenly, I felt something wet on my feet. "Is there water in here?" I asked, with no response. The smell inside the elevator intensified, and I immediately felt something was off about the situation. I quickly pulled out my phone and turned the torch on. Looking around, what I saw struck me like a lightning bolt. The elevator was now full of blood, its rapidly rising level lifting my body off the floor. In panic, I looked around for the man. My eyes met his in the corner. His face was finally visible to me. He looked me directly in the eyes, his wide, entirely black eyeballs shedding tears. Not normal tears, though. Whatever that thing was, it was crying blood. The space around me was shrinking every second. I struggled to breathe as the blood carried me and pressed my face against the elevator's ceiling. I kept knocking and screaming for help, but I eventually drowned and lost consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself outside the elevator, my clothes entirely clean, as if that encounter never happened, but I'm pretty certain it did.